don't you do it? Why don't you do an opening and I'll do an opening and we'll see who's better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello and welcome to Who's Your Main. I am Jared. Okay, you do yours. Mine's dumb.
Oh, I was going to do mine like a wrestling promo.
I know, that's why I was like...
I thought that's what you were going to do.
Well, I don't want to stay
Hey, everybody, this is Who's Your Main podcast. I'm Anthony, and this is my co-host, Jared. Oh, I almost said your last name.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
What?
What?
Listen, chat, we got to get you in on
Chat!
the joke. Sorry.
We're not streaming right now.
Well, you know what I mean. I mean, they know who they are.
This is a recording.
We were cutting some shorts earlier to get ourselves jacked up for this. We just started doing wrestling promos. They stopped being shorts, and we just started cutting wrestling promos.
Yeah. I've decided that this is going to help us visually.
Good.
Folks, if you've been watching our Twitch, or you probably haven't, but if you have... We've added a nice little element, and now we can't stop staring at it like two little, I don't know, what are we? We're like these two little guys now.
Yeah. I mean, we're literally our Stardew Valley characters. That's what it is.
It's perfect. This is where it all began.
Yeah, here in like 2 months, we're just going to come in and we're going to be speaking like... and we're just going to be like Animal Crossing characters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. You know how we were saying like we gotta have crisp openings. We gotta have crisp openings, and we gotta stop doing the Midwest goodbye. We gotta end the show. Yeah, we've gone completely off the rails.
Well, speaking of off the rails, I'm putting us back on because the last episode we were talking about GameCube games, and we left off this. It was kind of a sleeper hit. I did a cursory Google and skimmed the wiki, and it said it only sold about 500,000 copies. Eternal Darkness.
That's insane to me that it sold so poorly and was such a hidden gem, because as soon as we stopped recording, which we always do, we start talking about all the games we forgot to mention. That was one that we both had played. It like broke my mind when I played it. I remember that being one of the first times psychological horror was introduced in a game. I was terrified. I genuinely thought at different moments in that game that my house was haunted. I was haunted. You know what I mean? It scared me. It not just like the character or the story that it's portraying. I felt attacked. Me, the player. It was incredible. I loved that game so much.
Folks, if you haven't played this game, it was a third-person horror game where you played multiple characters throughout a timeline, like thousands of years. There was this eldritch horror that was like trying to come back to life, I think. There was these three different like magic sources in the game. I think it was like health, magic, and then your sanity. And the sanity one was... It was supposed to be the hardest playthrough. You had to like pick one. You beat it 3 times, and then you could do one more playthrough. And it'd be like a fourth. I think it was like a purple element. I don't remember. As you would encounter creatures or things that were not normal for a human to see, your character would lose sanity. Like it would lose like a health bar. And as that sanity went down, different things would happen in the game. Your character would die randomly. Or like they would just explode. You'd be like, no, what? And then you would just like come back to life. Or there would be like a bunch of monsters in the screen all of a sudden. Just all kinds of stuff that would like genuinely just creep you the fuck out. The worst one, this is a little bit of a spoiler as far as the sanity thing goes. You and I were talking about this, Anthony, was the one where it tells you your save file is deleted, and where it like comes up and is like, "Oh, you want to save?" And you're like, "Yes." And it goes, "Deleting your save file. Are you sure?" And no, deleting save file. No. What?
Yeah.
And it's like near the end.
Yep. That one got me bad. I like almost started crying. I remember when that happened. It's very hard to describe because there aren't very many games like it. It would randomly change the input that you were playing the game on. I just remember there being so many things that would happen that were real things, or it would like turn the TV off. Just things that were real. And I remember being genuinely scared playing that game, not just for my character, but for me. Like I felt like I was in danger.
Yeah, it's a different kind of scary than, say, Silent Hill or Resident Evil. it was definitely its own thing. And since it won like a bunch of awards, but since it basically crashed and burned as far as sales go, they just never got a remake. It never got ported to anything. It's just on the GameCube, and you have to play it on hardware if you want to play it. It's nowhere else.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. As soon as the podcast was over, we went to go look, and good luck finding a copy anywhere for any kind of a reasonable price. That's just not possible. Not now. But hopefully it's available when the Switch does their GameCube digital version of the GameCube. If that is the case, that is worth buying for me.
I know that it'll still work on the Switch 1, but that would sell me on a console. Be able to play that game again. I don't even know. I think the one that I played was John's. So he was the only person that I knew that had a copy of it. So there's hardly any copies in circulation. So I think this is a contender for a game that needs to be put into the GameCube digital place, because just like the other games that were announced during the Switch 2's little promo, a lot of those games they didn't sell very many of them, and getting a copy now is impossible without doing something that's not okay to do.
Yeah, I'm 100% on board with this. I always talk about how it's not the 10 out of 10 games that need to be, remade and brought into the digital age. This is the perfect example of what I'm always talking about. This is a hidden gem that I guarantee you most people haven't played, that they should be able to play, and decide for yourself if it's something you like. I understand not everybody likes horror games or scary games or anything like that, but you should have the option to be able to play arguably one of the greatest psychological horror games of all time. And the fact that up until now it's been prohibitively expensive, that's a shame. And I'm glad that it's happening. Well, glad that it's happening with an asterisk. We don't actually know if it is or not, but I would love for that to be the case.
I hadn't really even thought about this game since I just hadn't really thought about it in years until we started looking at GameCube stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, I remember that game. It was awesome. I played through it all 4 times, I'm pretty sure. I think it was 4 times you had to beat it to get the true ending.
I definitely did not do that. I played the Sanity run, and I got so scared I did not finish the other 3 or the other 2 playthrough, whatever number it may be. I just did the 1, and I was, no thank you. I will take the bad ending, actually.
I did the Sanity run for my first as well. Of course, I had my 3 brothers. There's 4 of us. I had my 3 brothers. We usually, if there was multiple endings to something, we would all pick one. And I got stuck with the color green. My older brother was blue, and my younger brother, Bryce, was red. So I was like, I'll do the green. My youngest brother, he was like, I'm not playing that game. Okay, man. And so I got the green. And after I got through mine, I was not scared of doing the other 2 runs. They weren't as scary, man.
Yeah,
you should have jumped back in on that. You'd have liked it. The red one wasn't even scary. It's like a health challenge run. I'm pretty sure is how that one goes.
After the first run, you don't even try to kill the enemies in the Sanity run. You just try to survive. So in the health run playthrough, do you have to actually kill the enemies, or do you just sneak by them?
I don't remember. It's been 20 years since I played this game. When did this game come out? 2002. I still got the wiki pulled up. I pulled it back up right before we started here. Yeah, so 23 years probably since I played this game. I don't remember. I would love to play this game again. Hey, Nintendo, if you're listening, I hope you are.
Yeah.
Also, we'll do promos for you.
Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why we got the bump in views on our shorts, is because Nintendo heard us talking about them, and they're like, "Well, let's check these guys out."
We cuss too much for them.
Yeah, you're right.
I cuss too much. I'm sorry, folks. We'll clean it up. We'll fucking clean it up. Oh shit.
Yeah, Jared's gonna go on a babyface run here. He's gonna get clean shaven, wear suits, start talking nice.
I'm gonna get clean shaven.
I'm going the opposite way though. I'm going full heel.
Then you can see that my beard, it covers up no chin. I'm just a thumb. That's what I'll look like, a thumb with a nose. Have you ever seen those movies, the Thumbellion movies? Folks, do you guys know who Steve Odenkirk is? He made Kung Pao movie, but he also made these movies called the Thumbellion movies. And there was Thumbtanic, and I don't remember the other ones. Thumb Wars. Thumb Wars. That was the other one.
I think we need to have like a special show where we just go on a each of us takes like a 10-minute segment and we just go on a rant about a show that we know that nobody else has ever seen before, but it's burned in our brains forever.
Oh yeah. Well, we were talking about that on our Twitch the other day about we were going to put together a spreadsheet of every reference that we make so that you folks at home can enjoy the brain rot that we are cursed with.
Yeah. If any of you guys want, you've already got one recommendation from Jared. If you want my recommendation, there's a movie that came out in 1977 called Slapshot. It's got Paul Newman in it. It's about a player coach. Team's getting ready to be shut down. The steel mill is closing and all of the jobs are drying up. The team's going to move. Highly recommend watching it.
We're losing! When we played Baldur's Gate 3 and we kill all the bad guys, Anthony here goes, "We're looting! We're looting!" It's a good time.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So there's a little treat for you guys at home. A little look inside our minds.
A looky loo. There were some other GameCube games we wanted to talk about. This is kind of the part 3 extra. We're going to lead into something that was bothering us earlier in the week. We lost probably 2 hours of play game time because of this this other topic we'll just hang on. We'll get to it.
Yeah. There's a couple of games that I had on my list that I didn't get to, and I think there's just a little bit more meat on the bone. So I just wanted to keep going, especially because I'm really not the Nintendo guy here, and so I was a little bit surprised by the crossover that we had, and maybe the lack thereof of crossover. And so the thing that I wanted to talk about was, and this is kind of like a resurgence, I guess you want to say, of games that I had originally played elsewhere, but they weren't my games. You know what I mean? This is the difference between maybe going over to a friend's house and playing something, and then when you finally get it yourself, you can kind of allow yourself to kind of bask in a game and really enjoy it the way you want to. And for me, on the GameCube, those games were the Resident Evil games. I don't know why. Well, I do know why. I received them as a gift. I had originally played them on PlayStation over at cousins' houses and friends' houses and stuff like that. Then when I got them for myself, this is kind of the time period where I was really starting to get into zombie games. I remember I played straight through Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3. I was completely enamored. I loved it. They were amazing games, amazing puzzle games. I loved the characters in them. Obviously, the STARS characters are very iconic. But I think the thing that they also do a really good job of is making the villains iconic and making them equally as important. And some of the fights in those, the boss fights in those games are really good. But I don't think you can top Resident Evil 4. That might be one of the greatest games of all time. I genuinely think when I played it, that was when it was locked in, where it was like, okay, Resident Evil is one of my favorite series of all times, and zombie games are one of my favorite genres of games all time.
Me blowing through the Resident Evil series here, folks.
Yeah, yep. I'm very, very highly glossing over.
Yeah, what's interesting here is, and let's build up to Resident Evil 4 here, because I think it's kind of important. The importance of the turn, talking about heel turns, the turn that Resident Evil took on the GameCube at 4. So they first remade Resident Evil 1. They remade it for the GameCube. An incredible remake. The graphics were so much better. I mean, we thought they looked real on the PlayStation. Hell, you could play Resident Evil 2. I think 1 maybe was on the game or on the 64. I don't remember, but I played both of them on the PlayStation, which we talked about in the PlayStation retrospective. But the remake of Resident Evil was really good. Would you recommend going back and playing Resident Evil 1 remake on the GameCube? It's kind of like the Twin Snakes remake.
Absolutely. And I think that's actually why it happened, was because of the success of Twin Snakes, is why Resident Evil kind of got that extra special edition. Absolutely. I think it's the definitive version, the best way to play. Like you said, the PlayStation 1, I think, is where the game started. but this is where it was refined and perfected. The camera, it's obviously a fixed camera game, and they have pre-rendered backgrounds. And essentially, what they just did was they just went back and doctored up the backgrounds and made them look a little bit more vivid. They're obviously not high definition. We're not there yet in our games, but they made them look much better. I want to say they added some quality of life features from Resident Evil 2, where you could have the knife. Jill had the knife attack where she could automatically stab if she got grabbed. I don't remember what else. Obviously they had all of the branching storylines. You could either be, is it Jill and Leon, or is it Jill and Chris in the first one? I'm misremembering.
I think that maybe you might be confusing Resident Evil 2 and the Resident Evil 1 remake. Resident Evil 2 was ported to the GameCube, and it basically got that treatment that you were talking about, where they prettied it all up. Resident Evil 1 was a full remake. The backgrounds were fully rendered new. I mean, fucking shiny floors, everything looked incredible. I think this game still can kind of stand up on its own, fear factor wise, if you're prone to being scared in scary games. Whereas maybe Resident Evil 2, even depending on which version you play, either way, you may not be scared by those kind of graphics. They're a little cartoony now as far as how maybe people would judge them.
Yeah.
Resident Evil 1, I thought that remake was incredible.
I just went and looked up the screenshots here. You're exactly right. I was switching those two games around. But you're exactly right. If I were going to recommend those game series to anybody, this is how I would want you to play it. This is obviously the greatest these games have ever looked. Now, obviously, you can get these games on Steam, but I think they are actually this version. I could be wrong on that as well, but for my money, these are the best versions of Resident Evil 1 and 2. And then 3, I think, is just a straight over port of the PlayStation game. I don't think it got the same treatment as the other two games. I mean, it was just insane to me. The tone of the game is obviously very different than traditional horror games. The acting is obviously meant to be very campy and almost intentionally bad, so that the humor of that softens the blow a little bit of all of the horror around you, so that you can kind of have this roller coaster effect of, oh, that was actually kind of like a fun moment that they shared there. And then you open the door to go to the next zone and the hallway's full of lickers and you're like, oh, okay, never mind. Fun's over. I don't want to play anymore.
That's one of my favorite takes that you have about Resident Evil and the voice acting, is that the campiness and the goofiness of it was to break up the fear factor of the game.
Yeah.
I think you're 100% right. And I'm with you on that 100%. I love that it's that campy. I love the jokes that are there. I think that they really add that charm to those games. Moving on, it's actually going backwards. I don't know why I'm smacking the table here. Going backwards in the storyline, but this I think came out. I don't know. We could probably Google it really quick, but Resident Evil 0. It was like supposed to be like the prequel to Resident Evil, the series. Did you ever play that on the GameCube?
I didn't play it on the GameCube. I actually went back and played it on Steam. But yes, you're exactly right. That was also kind of added to this lineup here to fill in a little bit of the blanks, maybe, from the story perspective. I love every single Resident Evil game I get my hands on. Like you said, it's kind of a prequel, so we kind of know what's going to happen, but I still loved the characters equally as much, if not more.
I did a quick search, and I can see that Resident Evil 1 was released earlier in the year of 2002, and then Resident Evil 0 actually came out in November later that year. Really interesting that they released them out of order story-wise. I never played Resident Evil 3 on the GameCube. Mostly, I got everything I wanted out of 0, 1, and 2, and then now people had been complaining about this series as far as its tank controls for years and years, and they're like, if I could just, why is my character, I got my gun right in their head, why can't I shoot them? Because it was like a dice roll on how accurate your character was. And so they made Resident Evil 4, I feel like, as like a response to that. The absolute change in style of this game. that happened.
It essentially went from being a survival horror inventory management game into an action game. I mean, you literally are suplexing and karate kicking zombies' heads off. The enemies go from being, oh no, I'm surrounded by a couple zombies in a hallway, to an entire village swarming around you, and you just kind of have to survive with a shotgun and a dream, essentially. I'll be honest, as a kid, looking back on it now, yes, I would wish that they made more of those traditional Resident Evil games. I didn't care. When I was a kid, I thought Resident Evil 4 was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. It was literally all of the spectacle and hype that I wanted, characters and story that I cared about. Leon and Ashley are some of the most iconic Resident Evil characters because of that game. It's insane. I loved it. I loved the craziness of it. I loved how over the top it was. It was insane.
Me and Anthony have been discussing doing some deep dives. I think this is a high contender on the list.
I agree, yeah.
I want to sit here and keep gushing about Resident Evil 4. And if you've never played any of the Resident Evil games, the original Resident Evil games are tank controls, fixed camera angles, limited ammo, survival horror games. Resident Evil 4, like Anthony just said, it switches into more of an action game, but it's still a survival action game. You still have only so much ammo. Killing everything on the screen is kind of the goal. And it is an absolute fun ride. I'll tell you this, though. So they've remade this game several times. I really preferred the Wii version, which we're not talking about the Wii today, but the most recent one, I loaded. I got to tell the story here for this. Well, maybe you'll hear it again if we ever do a deep dive. But I went to play the demo for Resident Evil 4 Remake, and I was like, "Oh man, it's for the village section of the game right at the beginning." And I was like, "Oh boy, I used to fucking blow this village apart. I could kill all the chainsaw guys that spawn and everything. This is gonna be easy." And I loaded into that, and the terror that filled me when I was playing, I couldn't finish it. I was terrified. Good job. That's what I would be clapping right now if it didn't do something to the mic. Amazing job. Because in my opinion, with Resident Evil 4, that's where the fear went away in Resident Evil games. I was no longer scared to play them.
I think there's almost zombies are kind of this weird thing where they were never really meant to permeate pop culture. They were meant to always be kind of this cult thing. These cheesy movies, these cheesy games, they were never meant to be serious. Once they became that, it's almost like people wanted them to be something that they're not. To me, zombies themselves are not scary inherently. The threat of them is not scary. What makes them scary is exactly what you just described. The thought of, oh, this is no problem. There's just handful of zombies. I've done this 1,000 times. Take care of them, no problem. Here we go. And then it's that slow dread of, I'm getting overwhelmed. I'm losing. That is zombie terror to me. It's not making the individual zombies dripping and oozing and disgusting looking. It's not that the zombies are evil. It's that people are evil. No, I don't want any of that. What I want in a zombie game, in a zombie movie, in a zombie show, whatever, the zombies are the enemy, and they are the slow representation of the undeath creeping up on you until they become so unmanageable that you're exactly right. There's no reason that game should ever be scary, and yet sometimes it is, because there's just that little hint in the back of your head that says, oh, I might lose here. I might get overwhelmed. Watch out. And that, to me, that's what I love. That's what I love about zombie games.
I left off one of the most important things about Resident Evil before 4, which I think they included it in 4, was the ink ribbon. You only had so many saves. So you had to do your saves correctly, and you had to manage all of your supplies. The battle of attrition, you being in yellow health, meant nothing. And I love this saying. I don't remember where I picked it up, but the only HP point that matters is the last one. It's the last one. And don't let it get into your head, folks.
Not only were the ink ribbons limited, they took up an inventory slot. If you wanted to save, you had to take them from where you picked them up and take them to a safe place, which meant you had to occupy a precious inventory slot to take them back to somewhere safe. Yeah, there are so many things about Resident Evil that I love. I definitely think it deserves a deep dive all on its own. Yeah, I don't know. And this kind of really just kept rolling through. Obviously, this isn't on the GameCube, but what they learned from 4, they took into 5 and 6, and I think people kind of started to think less of those games. Again, I think people forgot what Resident Evil was, which is it's campy. It's not meant to be this serious thing. And when people started bashing 5 and 6 for being things that it's not, I think maybe they lost maybe a sense of what the series was supposed to be. So yeah, I agree. I think all of these games are great, and the ones that I played on the GameCube are some of my favorites of all time.
Definitely deserves a longer time spent on it than we're spending here. But what else did you have that you wanted to talk about from the GameCube? I know you still had some left on that list, and we weren't going to get to them, but I think we've got the time now. Let's get to them.
Yeah. So these last 2 games here are kind of what led us down our rabbit hole this week. We'll get to that later. I just want to talk about these games very briefly, but looking over this list of all of the GameCube games that I was playing, the thing that I started to realize was there's kind of 2 sides to sports games that I really enjoy. There's the arcade fun sports game, and then there's the very serious sim sports game. And I love the sim style of games. I love taking a team and rebuilding the roster and turning them into champions. I love that. But I think what was happening on the GameCube was I was starting to realize some of these arcade games are equally as fun, even if that's not necessarily something that I want to pour hundreds of hours into. I think it can be a very fun way to play multiplayer or do the story mode on those. And the first one I want to talk about is MLB Slugfest. And for anybody who has ever seen footage of this game, the best way that I can describe it is if you've ever played NFL Blitz, it's that for baseball. So this is how I got introduced to this game. It's regular baseball, but then when you get to first base, let's say you get a hit, they throw it to first base, you're safe. Your player swings on the first baseman and punches him. And if he drops the ball, you can take off and go to second. The pitcher can get so jacked up, like mad, that he just beams the batter and a fight starts on the pitcher's mound. If you hit a home run, this is back when baseball was very serious. You weren't allowed to have any fun at all when you were playing professional baseball. You would hit a home run and you would pimp the home run and bat flip and watch it go and all of this stuff that you're not supposed to do, the unwritten rules of baseball and all that stuff. I lost my mind when I was playing this game. It was some of the most fun I've ever had in a baseball game. Every single person on the team could hit home runs. Anybody on the team could start a fight. It was so ridiculous and fun that, it absolutely deserved a mention.
And I don't have much experience at all with that game, so I don't really have much to add, but it sounds like a fun game, though. I mean, now I would play it.
This is one of those games that I maybe got at a garage sale or a rummage sale or something like that. I know for sure I didn't pay full price for it. And I don't think this is something where you're like, I'm going to buy a GameCube to play this. I wouldn't do that or anything, but I think if it's in a pile of games and you see it, it's definitely worth looking at for $5 or something like that. A nice, something to do for a weekend. And kind of, I guess you could say kind of in the same vein of that is the street games they had NBA and NFL games, street games. EA Sports made these. This was EA Big. So this is the company that made like SSX Tricky. They were really focusing on kind of these wild and crazy versions of sports games where there are no rules. So in NBA Street, it's 3-on-3 basketball. The point of the game is to get to 21 and beat the other team instead of playing by traditional basketball rules where there's fouls and 3 points and goaltending and all of that stuff. It is 100% street rules basketball. So if you ever played the Tony Hawk Pro Skater games, it's exactly like that. You want to try to chain tricks together and then end those tricks in a dunk. And if you do that, it fills up your game breaker meter. And when you get your game breaker, it's like a super in a fighting game. where you just start dunking the ball again and again and again and again, and you're chaining points while it's happening. So like you'll dunk it, the ball will bounce and come back up, and the next guy will dunk it, and that's another 2 points. And then he'll slam it in, and then the ball will bounce back up, and then your third partner will come back, and it's a 6-point play where you just do this insane alley-oop dunk. It's some of the craziest games, sports games I've ever played. And then obviously if you win, you get to take a player from the other team and add them to your roster. It was one of the most fun sports games I've ever played. They stopped making those a long time ago. Bring those EA big games back. I want those back.
Man, the combo system sounds really incredible. I love those like break from reality sports games where they just add some ridiculous non-life, non-realistic thing. I mean, it's great to have the realistic sports games. I think those need to exist. They should exist, but they definitely need these like arcade fantasy sports games for guys like me to just be like, oh, I think I know how basketball works now, like I don't watch sports, help.
And this is my soapbox. I get on this all the time, but EA Sports has kind of turned into this conglomerate that has absorbed every single sports game ever, and nobody else is allowed to make them. One thing that got lost in that is there's no such thing as this division anymore. There used to be arcade sports games and there used to be sim sports games, and that's not a thing anymore. Now it's just one game, and it's really not either one of those things. It's never sim enough for the sim crowd, and it's never arcadey enough for the casual fan who just wants high octane action and fun. And so really nobody is happy. Back in the day, we had this system figured out. You have literally 2 separate games for those 2 separate groups of people. Me, a person who likes the sim style of gaming, was looking across the fence going, hey, these games are pretty fun. This is a unique experience that you can't get anywhere else. And so I loved it. And exactly like you said, the combo system was so crazy and unique. You would be doing these tricks. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. Hey, can I do that? And so you go out in your garage or out in your driveway or something, and you take a basketball and try to do it. And you'd be like, hey, wait a minute. I can get pretty close to that. And now, granted, you would never do this in a game or anything like that, but it's exactly the same feeling you got from Tony Hawk's Pro Skater where, hey, can I do a kickflip? And so you just take your skateboard out and try and do one. And it gets you involved in this sport that you maybe never would have. I loved it. I loved those street style games from EA Sports Big. Those are some of my favorites of all time. I love those.
I'm not trying to push off our topic that we want to talk about, but it does involve sports games. But I think there's some other honorable mentions that I don't know why I forgot to mention them. Maybe because they're like no-brainer, like Bonk. Of course you would play that if you played it on the GameCube. Of course, now I think there's better ways to play it. I'll start with the first one, which is the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, like poured up in Master's Quest that was sold for the GameCube. I don't think there's really much to mention there. They're basically the N64 games. Nothing else was added. Another thing that I need to mention here, people may be wondering why the RPG guy isn't talking about the 2 like big RPGs that were on the GameCube, which are Tales of Symphonia and Skies of Arcadia. I didn't play those games. My brother played one of them. I had a friend that played the other, and they told me about them, and they sounded really fun. I just never got around to playing them. I have to mention this game. We lived out in the boonies, so I really couldn't actually play this game until years later. I played a private server of it. This game is long dead. This goes out to my buddy Zero, is the Phantasy Star Online 1 and 2. Episodes 1 and 2. This was like the original from the Dreamcast Phantasy Star game. I did play a little bit of it when it first came out. The guy who sold it to us told us you could play it offline, and you can. It's not very fun without a friend, though.
Yeah.
But that was incredible. I love the Phantasy Star series. So it's so cool. I do dabble a little bit in those Phantasy Star games now, especially because of my bud. But yeah, I think the last one to mention here that I have is Star Fox Assault. I don't know why I didn't bring this up before. We talked about the other Star Fox game that was an RPG. This one is a return to form for Star Fox. A lot of people made a lot of noise, I want to say, during during that time with the Star Fox Adventure game. And so Star Fox Assault came out. It's back in the cockpit, back in the R-wing, blowing people apart. The storyline continues for Star Fox and gang. And it was really cool. They tried to mix Crystal, the character from Star Fox Adventures, into the ships. They took Slippy out. I didn't like that. I didn't like Slippy being back at the ship. I wanted him to, always be the tech guy who flies an R-wing. I just like that. But I think Peppy was also pulled. I can't remember. It was either Peppy or Slippy. I don't remember which one. But I didn't like that Peppy was pulled. If it was him either, I can't remember. But those still a great game. If you love Star Fox, I feel like that's a niche game right there. How many people are still talking about Star Fox? The last one that came out was on the Wii U, and people were mad about that game. Of course, They were just mad about the Wii U. Maybe years later, they'll be like, "I wish we could play the Wii U Star Fox Game Zero. It looked so good." Star Fox Zero, I think that's what it was called. I have it. Still haven't played it. I've got kids now.
I think that's the case for a lot of things that we're talking about. They're a combination of either a hidden gem that nobody played, or they're so obvious, and like you said, maybe they were not as well regarded in the past, but looking back on them, we kind of have these rose-tinted goggles where it's like, that was the last one. We didn't know it was going to be the last one. We wouldn't have complained if it was the last one. And so there's kind of this desire to go back and play games that you can't play anymore. And so, yeah, I'm right there with you. And kind of in that same vein, my last thing here, and it's not even really a game. It's more of, I guess you could say, a hardware edition. The GameCube had this ability to pop a adapter on the bottom of it, and it would allow you to play Game Boy games through the system. You put a disc in and put the Game Boy game on the bottom. And Nintendo always does this. They always have some kind of connection between the hardware of their home system consoles and their portable gaming systems. I don't know why. This was just the one that really connected with me. They've had them since, I want to say, the Super Nintendo, and had them on the 64 as well. But for whatever reason, this was just the one that kind of stuck with me, and it really got me into kind of that hybrid. I mean, literally what the Switch is now, that hybrid style of, I'm going to play a mobile game, and then when I get home, I'm going to pop it into my console and play it on the big TV. Yeah, I can't really point to one game. Well, I can point to one game. It was Pokemon. You're just sitting there playing Pokemon on the go, and then you come home and play it on your console. That's just a cool thing that I think gets lost maybe on other systems. PlayStation has tried to do that with their Vita, and I can't remember for the life of me what the console now is called, the one with the big screen. Don't get me wrong, that's exactly why I bought the Vita, is because I love that experience. I love the idea of playing a game and continuing it through wherever you are, whether you're commuting somewhere and coming home, or you're maybe just riding in the car and coming home. I love that. I think that's an awesome thing that Nintendo has done basically since the very beginning, and they're kind of one of the champions of that. Really, it took Sony a very long time to catch up and get to that same standard.
I didn't have the Game Boy player, but I had the Super Game Boy for the Super Nintendo. It was fucking awesome. Loved that thing. That's how I beat a lot of my favorite Game Boy games. That's how we played the Game Boy games that were two-player. There was a lot of two-player fighting games. We're not talking about the Super Game Boy right now. I think in the future, folks, you're gonna get a console wars debate from me and well, not really a debate, discussion, where I was the Nintendo guy here in this little, our happy little couple here, and he's the Sega guy. So as much as I would want to sit there and talk about the Game Boy player and its ability to play Game Boy Advance games and things like that, and wish that I had one. I think let's dive into this topic here. We've got just a few more minutes to get it started. I'll give you a little taste of what we were wanting to dive into. Well, it's kind of leading into the Wii a little bit. Well, we're not going to do. I don't think we're going to do a Wii retrospective, are we?
I don't know.
We might.
We might. Depends.
Well, this is our call to action, folks.
There you go.
We're not going to tell you exactly all the titles that we're going to talk about, but it's the Mario sports games.
Yeah.
We want to discuss them. Maybe have we run out of time? We still got some time to sit here and talk about them?
I don't know. You're the guy with the clock.
I think.
How are we doing on time?
I think we're right at time, to tell you the truth.
Okay, good. This is perfect. We can lure them in, with this teasing anticipation, and then you have to wait an entire week before you hear the conclusion.
It's the Mario sports games, folks. We're going to talk about them. Okay. Next week, we're going to talk about the Mario sports games. So we got carried away finishing up the GameCube stuff. I didn't realize we had so much more to say about that. I was ready to dive into the Mario sports thing. I guess we're gonna do that for next time.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good to me.
All right, then. Well, I guess we'll see you next week, folks.
See ya.